Okay, so my name's Victoria. I am part of the Design Justice Network. I have been part of the steering committee, and now I serve as staff to support all of the amazing coordination work that happens within the network. Some of that involves sharing member stories, and that's what we're doing today. These sessions are for Design Justice Network members to kind of have the opportunity to talk to other members, ask questions about stories that will be shared, and as well the opportunity to just share stories about people doing design justice work in the world. So first, I want to thank everybody who's volunteering. Some folks are helping with documentation today. And then I also want to thank Dr. Pierce Gordon, who is our presenter today. And I will welcome him in by just reading out his bio to introduce him. So Dr. Pierce Gordon is an innovation catalyst, researcher, facilitator, and evaluator, impassioned by the space between transformation and liberation. As the director of Equity Innovation Studio at Think Rubix, a Black-led social innovation consultancy, Dr. Gordon serves as a researcher, facilitator, evaluator, and change catalyst that builds equity innovation into our collective future. He's taught courses in design, evaluation, international development, and equity across 4 continents, co-designed partnerships, products, and services with local and international changemakers to support social change, and researched the complexity, evaluation, and emergence of design and innovation across the world. So thanks everyone for being here, and welcome Pierce, and I will let you take over.
Hey folks, how we doing? How we feeling? We all right? It's been a wild day for me personally. I'm actually literally getting legally married tomorrow, and the country that I'm in right now is doing everything in its power to make it difficult, but we are going to make it happen. I'm actually speaking to you from Botswana, where my fiance is from, and where I did much of my own dissertation research, of which I will be saying a very small amount of the work, but I'm deeply appreciative to have the space and time to connect with other Design Justice Network colleagues, participants, collaborators. I hope I can learn from you the same way that I hope you will learn just a bit from me with the short presentation we have and the subsequent conversations. So what I'm going to do is share my screen real quick. Beautiful. Can you all hear me? Are we good? Nice, beautiful. Let's make it happen. Come on now. I need you to take a full screen. Why are you being difficult? Of course you're being difficult right when I need you to be non-difficult. There we go. Cool. Can you all see my screen? Cool, beautiful. Thank you very much. So I'm gonna do my best to blaze through the pieces. If there are other points that people want to isolate during the question categories, and if there's a lot of other slides past the ones I'm gonna show you about some of the thoughts I've had around the intersection of design and equity, justice, liberation, and the like. So we can dive into that a little bit afterwards. But first, I wanted to talk a little bit about who am I, what the type of work I'm doing right now. I literally recently, speaking particularly on February 1st, just accepted a job as a director for a studio that essentially I will be creating myself as a part of a startup, as she described before. And the work that I did before that has always been, fortunately, in this intersection of multiple fields. My PhD specifically focused on innovation practice, evaluation capacity building, and international development and equity. Before this work, I was the inaugural innovation fellow at a makerspace in Arkansas, the Arkansas Regional Innovation Hub, through a litany of projects I was involved in here. And I'm tasked right now with creating a community that supports the construction of equity innovation in the unique niche that we aim to develop on. So with that, I'm going to speak a bit about the experiences that I've had and some of the thoughts that have been running through my mind about the value of our work and where I believe it should go over time, as in a litany of spaces. And the place I can start is actually, I'm looking for a better phrase to describe this, but I like to describe it as the quote unquote gold star project. It's the asset that if someone hears what the project was, their ears immediately perk up. It hits all of the right boxes related to design, co-design expertise, some type of sometimes hopefully ethics work / ethics washing, international development work. It was a deep sand wheelchair co-design project as a part of the International Development Design Summit run by MIT, that then evolved into a larger dissertation about the Botswana innovation ecosystem, specifically their evaluation capacity. So this project was with indigenous communities, particularly the San, that lived in the Kalahari Desert here, about 8 hours north driving from where I currently stand. It was a part of a 4-week, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. co-design project with 60 separate people from 25 separate countries working on 6 individual projects. Specifically, if anyone's ever heard the phrase appropriate technology 2.0, developing tangible assets that aim to better the specific lives of the community members of which the larger ecosystem is built for them to co-design, co-implement, and co-sustain over time. And that project then evolved into a much larger dissertation, of which a smaller part was having the blessed space to go back in the specific village and learn about what we had accomplished a couple of years prior. What I realized is after doing one of the first historical analyses of what actually had occurred in that space, at least written in the in peer-reviewed journal articles, that there was a litany of projects that had started because of the creation of a church and built off of that supported the interventionist definition of what type of development they believe the San should engage in. From a litany of projects from the WIMSA, Working Group of Indigenous Minorities in Southern Africa, related to the political empowerment of the communities, from Naro Language Project, the specific sign language they spoke being Naro, translating that into an entire Bible, from the Kudu Art Project. One big reality of all of these projects and these instances is that the vestiges of the previous projects were invisible to the interventionists that had come before. And that was definitely the case for the work that we were a part of, that the communities had experienced, dealt with, put brave faces on for the development of these types of interventions that at its core did not enact in any serious transformative change for their reality, for their rights, for their context. And recognizing that was one of the biggest realities in, as a deep student of a litany of the different design practices, that in this space, co-design was not enough to be able to do this work effectively. And ensuring recognizing context and history is important, but as I don't need to tell anybody on this call, the power dynamics of what you can accomplish when you are coming with a specific design expertise is extremely valuable to discuss. And the biggest point I wanted to hit on from a larger, if we want to zoom out, is recognizing the litany of spaces that I've been in that made me ask, why is it like this in the first place? And I think the largest single historical answer that I've come across, I got answered by a professor named Ahmed Ansari, who has an online resource called Modernity and Coloniality, a full course that you can take specifically created for designers about the creation of today's world system. He shows this map and one of the beginning courses that specifically talks about different circuits of world systems, different labor systems, different political systems, different art, different culture, different societies as a whole, that all these not circles, ovals, all interact in, and speaking about how the communities, the universes adapted and evolved with each other over time. And in these spaces, innovation, creativity, synergies happen at the intersections, at the margins of these spaces. We don't live in that world anymore. They also give the reality of how the world system that we currently live in began to become evolved as the introduction of mercantilism, particularly the Spanish and the Portuguese, that started all litany of slave trades to the Caribbean, to the Americas and the like, and worked to create a system of economic exploitation built on the back of a racialized hierarchy for the first time. That then built into a recognition of a center of the world where everything is valued, the universe as a whole, the labor systems, the products, the sources, the information, and the periphery as the rest. And this is a explanation in the class of a litany of the different examples of centers and peripheries, of which design clearly has one of those categories. So a aesthetic hierarchy of not just what designers create and how they come up with information, but how the process of design is engaged with, which is very, very much so doesn't just speak towards the relationships between people, but the institutions people create, the power dynamics of who has what, and the hegemonies, the myths about who is more important and who is not. I came across this tweet recently that spoke towards that reality. This tweet seemingly to me seemed like a conversation in the US primarily, or in a Western country, not exactly sure which one, but is very much so aligned to that reality of the problem with centered design, that centering a specific identities, centering a collection of methods and toolkits is one way that does not account for all of the ways humans have been designing, innovating, transforming the world in the ways that they've adapted for centuries. One of the big realities of why that asset has been so valuable, that specific world systems theory reality, is recognizing, number one, that oppression is unsustainable, share the same root. Number two, that the people that are understanding the world systems are those at the margins of those systems in a litany of ways, the intersectionalities and the like. But additionally, the reality that the world that we live in right now, as many issues are piling on top of each other, did not exist like this specifically 500, 600, 700 years ago. And recognizing that and building towards a new opportunity for the world gives me hope. And in doing so, it makes me think more about the things that centered design affects. And I use the framework of understanding the past, the present, and the future. The past, the things that we as designers, if we are successful, get a chance to create and take on social lives past our intentions. Number two, the present, the things that we're doing every single day, the positionality, the perspectives and power that we take whenever we're doing our design work, from the conversations we have and from the people that aren't a part of these, and the powers and how power moves in those spaces. And the future, what we imagine to be possible. The people that get a chance to tell what the future should look like, the Elon Musks and the like, that are put on Front Street, as to say. And limits our ability to imagine what else is possible. So that's what actually the past conversation is what got me thinking about 100 racist designs. Backup is the opposite. I had thought about 100 racist designs before I thought about like the ways that designers past gets enveloped into oppressive systems. But perfect examples I like talking about, from optical heart rate monitors that more experience Black skin in ways differently than white skin. Server tipping system that was literally created out of the vestiges of slavery and was solidified by Herman Cain. You should look it up, you should check it out. And speech recognition technology that is based on a manner of specifically American speech that actually was based on a completely made up way of talking that was created in the mid 30s that did not reflect the realities of how communities spoke in at the time, the eastern middle part of America, particularly from, I'd say, New York to about Maryland and the like. So those situations represent how those realities of what was constructed are fabricated and affect our lives today. So I hit on a lot. I probably took too much time, but I wanted to pose some reflection questions that I like speaking about in all the pieces that I'm a part of that you can hit on here. I'm gonna move quick because actually never mind that link right there, because there's another link that I appreciate you go to that has a collection of resources that are here and in other presentations I've been a part of, so that we can further communicate the value of these intersections and also the questions that I asked before. So those are available to you. You literally just go to that bit.ly, lowercase consider equity, and it should be available for you. And I believe the link is going to be in the show notes as well. So I'm ready to have a further conversation. That is what I got for right now. Let's have some fun.
Thank you, Pierce. Thanks for sharing the story. And so now the way we've been running these meetups is that we give folks, all the Design Justice members here, a couple minutes to go into breakout rooms just to talk about all the ideas that you just learned and think about questions. But of course, also introduce yourselves and maybe a little bit about yourselves. So what I'm going to do is break us into breakout rooms, 3 or 4 people. And we're going to use Google Jamboard. You can use it, you don't have to. But here is the link. I just pasted in the chat. So you're going to go to the room or use the board that is associated with the room number that you'll go into. And I'm going to do a very quick screen share just to show you. Oh, I will stop your screen share, Pierce, and I will share mine.
Sure.
Just to show you what you'll be going into. So this is the link that I just put in the chat, a Google Jamboard. It just has some questions here that you might want to discuss in your group. Introduce yourselves, discuss the story, things that Pierce was sharing, anything interesting, anything you want to discuss, and any questions that you want to ask Pierce. You can add the questions to the Google Doc here, or you can throw them in the chat after. I will put those links in. And I will show you very quickly how to use the Google Jamboard in case you haven't before. So when you go in, what I see most often is just a sticky note and the little menu pops up and you can share your name or your ideas or what question do I have. And when you click save, it pops up onto the board there. And then you can also do text boxes just like this and just start typing. And then there's some other tools like eraser tool or pen tool. So feel free to have fun. I'll delete both of these. And now I'm going to put you into the breakout rooms, 3 or 4 people, and you'll have about 10 minutes just to talk about the story and come up with any questions that you have for Pierce. So we'll see you back in about 10 minutes. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. It seems like maybe there were some good discussions because everyone didn't want to come back out of their breakout rooms, which happens a lot, I think. So now it's time for a question and answer. You can either feel free to say your question out loud, type it in the chat, or type it into the Google Doc, the session outline today, and then I'll help facilitate the questions getting answered. So if anyone wants to ask one out loud, feel free to go ahead right now. No, okay, and I don't see any in the chat. So I see a couple in the notes document. So feel free to add more. So Pierce, I see two questions. One says, can you share more about the project Wide Wheels Wheelchairs, the design process?
Yeah, sure. I can definitely do that. So I think it's valuable to start not just with the design process, but what constituted the design process, so you can tell a bit about what was available and what wasn't. So at the time, from 2012 to 2017, I believe, MIT received funding from USAID to engage in something called the Higher Education Solutions Network to fund some of their programs. My school at the time, Berkeley, also got money from that program to fund a specific program. And for them, it was going to the D Lab, specifically towards international development. So they had the chance to expand their program to create a larger ecosystem of people that focused on this specific form of co-design. So they isolated, for them, the way that they define for, with, and by type design work is they have one particular project of when they do these types of summits that lasted from 3 to 6 weeks, had a collection of in-country and external, quote unquote, specialized stakeholders connecting and being put into teams that focus on a particular project for a little bit of that time, like maybe a week less than that time, and then the rest of the week is talking about continuity. But during that entire process, we started with the original team facilitators and the main heads did extensive work to figure out which projects make sense with the community. So Deep Sand Wheelchair was our project, but there was also a Marula nut breaker. There was a, what else was a project? Oh, there was a sun concentrator project. So they brought a, goodness, I forget the name of the concentrator, but it effectively, a piece of glass that gives the ability to concentrate the sun up to hundreds of times to melt sand into beads, from a whole bunch of other projects that affected the everyday lives of this specific community and related to their culture, their context, and the like. So for us, it was 3 weeks of trying to engage in understanding the potential stakeholders, the beneficiaries, the users, and the like, and a little bit of that ecosystem, recrafting the problem, doing certain prototyping with with metal. We did welding, we did woodwork, we did paperwork, and all those types of things. We did projects to understand some of the assets that they constructed, from indigenous kids games to creating, what is the word, arrowheads and the like that they have used through history to hunt, and then to turn that and build that into what we're going to accomplish, how we measure the accomplishment, how we physically create the asset, how we test it, and now how we give it back to the community for some terms. I say that to say what we couldn't do in that work. From my own research, I realized that there was a larger conversation that wasn't happening about, there was a larger conversation that wasn't said blatantly during the event about how Botswana has interacted with this specific indigenous community in a different way. One thing I like to say, and I add a bit of caution because I am not a scholar of the San community. There are so many different research and projects that are part of that, that have done that type of work in Southern Africa as a whole, overstudied in many ways. But that Botswana actually, there's one thing in the US that they have developed for indigenous communities that does not exist in Botswana, and that is reservations. So there are no reservations that exist for the San and the way that they connect and interact, particularly because one main definition that people use across the world towards defining indigeneity is inapplicable for the continent, because everyone on the continent says we're already from here. What do you mean indigenous? Everyone here is indigenous. And that evolves into how the indigenous communities, the San, have been disenfranchised, mistreated, and how external actors have advocated for them and potentially gotten kicked out of the country based on their actions. That's the end of that point, that different advocacy activities have historically caused tensions that make interventionists that do want to do work towards benefiting these communities not be able to advocate for politics, for supporting land, for changing how poverty is institutionalized in the law. That means that designers, when we do the type of work that we're engaged in, the problem framing process is inherently limited by that process if you're coming from the outside. Additionally, it means that the effectiveness of whatever solution you're developing is stymied by the assets that are available that say they're intended to help these specific San communities, but are affected by how the world, how this country sees who gets what based on poverty. There's obviously a lot there, and it's very complex, but that's a bit of the process. I said too much. That took so long.
No, I think it was great. Kind of related, you kind of were speaking to it there, but there's another question about power dynamics in the design and research process, and how to kind of address those power dynamics. Do you have any tips or advice or ways that you've done that in the past that you could share?
The question. Every time I reflect on these collection of questions related to design and power, the biggest thing that comes to mind is, how not just how so much design practice is affected by, especially traditionalized, normalized design practices, affected by power systems if they don't accept them. If you're a consultant, if you're working in a big tech company, if you're working for a government entity, you are working on the behalf of power centralizers that in many situations don't recognize how they're continuing to produce and centralize their power, but how the opposite of doing that activity is, it is a valuable but institutionally exhausting endeavor. So all the stuff I talked about with the San in that community, there are a few other projects that I've been a part of, and one difficult reality I've recognized is being someone, when we talk about design, most of my activity has been in helping people imagine the future or facilitating that process, like being a space maker for some workshop or the like, and how little opportunities I've had once I've done those things to turn the benefits that people get out of that process into something that, like, it feels like the power was never wielded in the first place. The communities that got me there, that said, oh, this is interesting, this is useful, they got me there, and it was a form of design theater or activity, and that was great, that was wonderful, we're glad that we had that experience. And then when you try to push in a way that the powers that be would not allow that to happen, they swing their weight. It doesn't happen all the time, but I've been in many situations where they swing their weight and they're like, whoa, 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 that was nice. You had your little fun. Now let me do my things. And I'm not speaking towards specific examples because people might be at risk, but it's representative in those situations. It tells me how important to figure out ways to connect and interact with people that consistently do this on the day-to-day, that don't speak the language of quote unquote design. The favorite people when it comes to power dynamics, the people that I love to learn from are activists. The people that I love to connect and interact with and figure out how to subvert are communities that know there's a problem with the powerful system they're a part of, in academia or government, what have you, and don't have any idea about how to move towards equity, because it's a really hard task to do. I think a really valuable tool, two valuable tools that I've recently come across. There's a website called powercube.net that talks about different ways that you can manifest and understand forms and shapes of power in a way that designers can easily facilitate and make plain and clear in communities. There's a book called The Power Manual that I blazed through. I said, this thing is fire, that I really, really appreciate. I'm not sure if it's in the list that I've collected, but the long story short is designers got to talk about it if they're going to talk about shifting and changing things for the better. And they're not the only ones that do this work or engage in it effectively. And as consummate transdisciplinarians, it only makes sense if they're trying to do anti-oppressive work that they learn from people that have been doing it before, that don't take the moniker of design.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense, and is definitely part of what the network principles definitely acknowledge, but it's always work to continue to do. There's another question in the chat from Amy. Are you able to speak this truth to power and how it has been received?
Whew. I do my best where I am. I think what's valuable in so many conversations I've been a part of is recognizing where my role is in dealing with anti-oppressive struggle. A little bit about me personally. I have been raised to be a peacemaker. I'm a middle child. I've connected and interacted with, my favorite activity is helping people help themselves towards what they're trying to accomplish, like working with changemakers, saying, I'm trying to do this. Or like, have you thought about that? Like, wow, let's go that direction. That type of activity. And it means that many of the spaces that I've been involved in personally, and this is something I have to work on myself, I have been more comfortable being outside of places of specific agitation. I've been connected with people that are themselves recognizing some type of systemic concern and are trying to figure out their way of moving forward. And I have done school well. I know how to do communicate knowledge and distill academic jargon into, hey, how about X, Y, Z, ABC? So it's been useful to connect with those communities and speak power in those spaces. But at its core, at the same time that the system requires so many different personalities that are all acting towards liberation, it also requires, for me personally, recognizing where I still have yet to grow. And agitation is a piece of it. It is when you're saying speaking truth to power, sure, you can do it with people that are already on your side, that you're already speaking to the choir. Yet and still, the folks that see themselves and love their role as agitators that's still something. I mean, at its core, it's something I got to work on. I could try and put some highfalutin knowledge and language and words on it, but it takes it pressuring those. There's so many ways that power moves, and the dissemination of knowledge and using truth power to make that happen is only one of them. And why not use the tool if it's available to us to make that action happen? So I appreciate you making me reflect on that concept.
It's almost getting to the top of the hour, and there's a hard stop at the top of the hour. So I'm going to ask, there's a couple more questions, unless anyone wants to say one out loud vocally. I'll read you them because they're shorter, but you can answer which you think is best. So one is...
I will also answer them shorter.
Okay. So one is 100 racist designs. Any chance you'll continue this list? The second, the second question is, how do you reflect on the consequences of designs you've created? And then the third one is, how do you facilitate imagining the future? So those are quite three big questions.
Fire. But I can get on them. I can get on. Appreciate you on that. Number one, 100 racist designs. Damn, you try to get me. It's so much to make that list in the first place. I appreciate you saying that point, because I mean, why the hell not? For stuff that we're building on. Second question. Damn it. Help me.
The second question was, how do you reflect on the consequences of designs you've created?
I don't know if this is the one that we hit on in the first group, but I want to make sure I hit on that one as well. How do I reflect? I recognize so much of design practice in the way we've seen it. One way that it manifests the continuation and production of privilege is how designers, especially in international development and social works activities, benefit more from the retelling of what they believe they accomplished in the communities that they intended to help. It is the main way that I see so many designers manifest, especially in the industry, is by packing their portfolio. And that's a problem. It's a real problem. So I think a big question that comes to mind on that is like, what would you accomplish if you didn't have to put your name on it? Or if your name was not attributed to the things you're developing? That's a hard one in the world that we're a part of. Got more questions on that? And there are many other examples about the space that they build up, who has power over what the design process looks like, what the outcomes are intended to do. For the community with the San, recognizing the institutional voids that make a design impossible to sustain, especially with the Deep Sand Wheelchair Project. That is literally one big reason why it did not sustain. What was the third question?
The third question was, how do you facilitate imagining the future?
Learn from Black women. Learn from marginalized people. Learn from indigenous storytellers. Learn from queer folks. Learn from disabled folks that are disabled. Two things I consistently talk about, and there's so much more I need to learn in these spaces. Number one, I am frustrated that design communities don't, especially pedagogical communities, don't offer space for fictive world building. There's a talk by N.K. Jemisin if you just look for N.K. Jemisin world building, that talks about her creating what the world could look like if it looked like a pizza, if it looked like from creating a fiction environment, and then creating the macro world building, how the water works, how the physics work of the system. Is there a magic system? Is it soft? Is it hard? How did society look in the past, in the future? And then micro world building. How do the societies interact and connect each other? What are the myths? What are the politics? What are the interactions between people? And then from there, creating the humans, usually that designers recognize creating a persona from, right? That's number one. Number two, the books that people have written: read Parable of the Sower, read Parable of the Sower, read Parable of the Sower. There's another, it's not, I'm gonna get the name wrong, but from N.K. Jemisin again, a collection of short stories, something like Whatever Happened to Black Future Month, something like that. But other communities that, because there's a person called, there's a futures consultant called Monica Bielskite that speaks about protopian futures, not dystopian, not utopian, because they're usually two sides of the same coin, but the opportunity for multiple building, pluralistic opportunities for creating the world, because the stories that we create become the products, services, interventions that we construct as a whole. So learning from those communities to build assets to tangibly imagine the alternatives that make up the space of equitable design, ecological design, pluralistic, and the like, and figuring out ways to bridge those connections between what designers have done very well, if they're practitioners, if they're facilitators, and the people that know how the world works because they've had to create new ones.
Thank you so much, Pierce, for squeezing in those questions just before. That was amazing. I tried to capture some of the books and references that you said in the chat as well. So thank you so much for being here, for sharing the story, for answering all the questions, and to all the members who are here, like, thanks so much for joining. Hope you enjoyed, and I put a little link to a survey if you want to provide any feedback about today. Please do. We're always trying to make things better, more accessible, more able for more folks to join. So feel free. And the notes are there, so you can go back and reflect on them. And thank you so much, everybody, for—
1 second, my apologies. I was trying to put it to everybody.
Oh,
I'm just going to
put
my email right there.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to connect with me, talk about any of these things, talk shop. I know I'm trying to get assets as well. I'm trying to get help with my stuff. But I'm deeply appreciative of your space and time. If you want to connect with me, please connect to me there. I appreciate all y'all.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks, everybody. Have a lovely morning, afternoon, day, evening, depending on your time zone.
Talk to you later.
And congratulations tomorrow, Pierce.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you very
Enjoy.
much.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.